Good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This Board of Education policy meeting is being called to order at 6:35, and it is, my watch keeps going off. I think it's May 23rd, right? Does that sound right to everyone? Okay, great. Dr. Solon, would you call the roll, please?
Okay. Mr. Grippo?
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Mr. Grippo, you have a quorum?
Great. Well, you know what? There's a flag in the background there, Dr. Solon. We'll just use that for the pledge. That way you don't have to do anything fancy.
That works for
Sound
me.
good? Okay.
That works for me.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I do say so myself, we may be getting the hang of the virtual pledge. That sounded actually in sync tonight.
So, Dr. Solon, you said that there might be some adjustments to the agenda this evening, I guess, right? Well, I guess
Yes.
first, let's go to, was there any public comment?
There was not.
Okay. Very good.
The two items that I would recommend that we postpone to the next meeting would be policy number 3543 and 3450, school activity fund and monies in school buildings. Both of those items will be covered by a report by Mr. Massiana and a representative from Clifton Larson Associates, who's the accounting firm who recently finalized or has recently conducted an audit of the student activity accounts in the school system. There are recommendations, that have been drafted, and those include updating those two policies from 1996. Mr. Massiana was able to schedule a our next meeting will be virtual. I think it's June 14th, Adam, if memory serves me.
Yeah.
And that would be at 7 o'clock to review those two policies, among others. So I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion to table those two items. Mr. White, if you want to move that those two policies be tabled to the next meeting.
So I move that policies 3543 school activity fund and 3450 monies in school buildings are tabled until our June 14th policy meeting.
I'm sorry, that would be postponed. Tabled would be for later.
Sorry.
So if you want to give that another shot, my apologies.
Got it. All right, so I move that policies 3543 and 3450 are postponed until our June 14th policy meeting.
Is there a second? There is a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we're going to start at policy 1140. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, great. And which one are we going to start with? Our existing policy?
Sure, we can take a look at the existing policy of distribution of materials. That's 1140. This is our existing policy that you see on the screen. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to review that. This policy was last updated in 1996, April 15th. So we're coming up on its 28-year birthday.
Yeah. By the way, Dr. Solon, I don't see.
Are you sharing screen?
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I'm assuming you're talking about the CPF policy,
Yep.
not the CABE policy that's there in the.
How's that?
Here we go. Yeah,
Good.
looking better.
There we go. Thank you. So again, April 15th, 1996. So just over 28 years old, this policy, outlining, flyer distribution, announcement, content of those distributed materials. Basically a statement that really that our kids can't be exploited. For instance, if a local business came and said, hey, we've got this activity going on, we'd love to get some students during the day to come and work for 3 days, and we're not going to pay them. Obviously, that's being exploited. So that it's all left to the superintendent's ultimate discretion as to whether or not these things are appropriate. And I'll be honest with you, we don't get that request, at least not in the 6 years I've been superintendent, anything like that. And then budget and referendum materials will be a bit more germane this day as we start to embark on our school modernization process. Basically that we can only share the specifics of time, date, and location, the question or proposal to students. This is only to students. And again, as we think about contemporary issues, we don't really give a lot of paper to kids to take home anymore. We do a lot of that through virtual distribution. So the CABE version of that same policy, 1140, is not, frankly, dramatically different than the Cheshire Public Schools version, although there were a couple of items that I wanted to highlight for your attention and maybe your consideration. So the beginning of the policy outlines the three same, rough ideas that are outlined in our policy with this paragraph here. All requests from groups or individuals to have children distribute materials to people in the community, with the exception of requests from school-connected organizations like PTO or board-appointed citizens ad hoc advisory committee, will be referred to the office of the superintendent to determine whether requests comply with overall school purposes and policies. I take a little bit of an exception to the idea that the PTO and ad hoc advisory committees would not have this reviewed, because I think even well-intentioned, they may inadvertently send something out that is in direct violation of this policy, unless the board feels like it's okay if PTOs and ad hoc advisories violate this. I just don't know that it's a great idea. So my recommendation would be that either we remove the exemption or at least refer to the principal who could consult with the superintendent to review the policy. The other consideration in here, again, a lot of this language for use of students is the same. This is just a note from CABE that would be removed unless you wanted to just remove the CABE note. We don't distribute paper planners, notebooks, or anything like that with advertising on them, but I don't know that it's a bad idea to just keep that part in there anyway and just take the CABE note piece off. But the dissemination of religious materials is something I had a question about. Materials that have a religious content may be available to students during non-instructional time. The district shall impose content-neutral time, place, and manner restrictions on the dissemination of religious materials to ensure students are aware that materials are not being endorsed or sponsored by the district. That would be something I would recommend we perhaps consult with Floyd about, potentially removing that piece. But that's your call as to whether or not you'd like me to do that. Again, as I've worked in the district as an administrator for 17 years, I can't remember that issue ever coming up. Although we do have some religious clubs, if this would encroach on that, I don't want to do that. Kids may have clubs and activities after school that they want to do, but if this is something more about having a religious group come in and proselytize or something, I know that under free speech is a public building, we would have to make the building. I'm not really sure what this is speaking to, so I would want to consult with Floyd upon your consent to our attorney to get a little bit more clarity around this issue.
I don't know. For me, I think that the policy that we have is actually arguably better written than the CABE policy. It's a little bit more general, gives you and your administration a little bit more flexibility in all of these issues, with the exception of advertising. Maybe adding some the advertise clause might be something.
I agree with you there, Adam. I hadn't really thought about reverse engineering it, just pumping the CABE language into ours. I think our policy would be stronger if we take that paragraph about advertising in the school, push it into our version, and then I think we're good at that point. I can consult with Floyd on the distribution of religious materials. It's not covered in our current policy to get his advisement, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
Sam, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I would definitely go in the direction of consulting with Floyd. I'm just trying to think of, Jehovah's Witness, right? That's the first thing that came to my mind when I read this. I mean, are we allowing those types of items to be distributed to our kids during or after school, though? Because you have certain, like the temple I know uses Humiston, on the weekends for religious school. So where does that line cross, I guess?
Yeah, they engage in the building use process, which we couldn't, any religion, we could not exclude based on the religion.
Right.
So if, an objection, something that we may even not have a religious affinity to, they could use the building as well as anybody else. I mean, that sounded terrible, but
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying.
A made-up religion that hated dogs. Well, I love dogs. I might find it objectionable that this religion hates dogs, but
Right.
we have to permit that.
And
so
then
I do
wouldn't.
want a little bit of guidance about what are we trying to address here. Is my
Yeah.
question. I guess that's where I'm struggling.
Yeah, and I also thought about like the boys and girls, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, if there's any affiliation to a religion of some sort. I'm just trying to anticipate all these, like you said, different possible
Now,
religious
Adam,
connections.
with his memory, probably recalls years ago we had to review a policy that specifically included that we had to permit the Boy Scouts. It was literally written right in the law.
Yeah, well, yeah, aren't they specifically like a Group A usage
Yeah.
or something like that? Yeah.
But that's, but I think what we're trying to get to here is what are we trying to do with this dissemination? What is this even covering? And so we can ask that question.
Tim?
Okay.
Yeah, no. So my question is, the answer to that I'm thinking is why it's on the agenda. Why? I mean, if it hasn't come up in 17 years, I'm just curious. Like,
yeah, just that one component hasn't come up.
Okay. So you're just saying
just that
there's
one piece about the
other things
Yeah.
came up. You referred to the Gabe guidance and the Cabe guidance. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine if you. I mean, if you want to talk to Floyd, I wouldn't put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, God knows there are a lot of fish to fry these days, but that's a pretty quick question.
I mean, my reading of it would be, I think it was more of a dissemination of literature, kind of like what Sam was saying, like a Jehovah's Witness pamphlet,
Right.
for example, right, or something like that. Because I don't think we've had like members come on campus and handing out literature during a lacrosse practice or something like that. Because I guess technically that's kind of what this is talking about. But I think it was more about. It seemed like more in the reference of like a student group or something, handing out stuff in the hallways or something like
I
that.
mean, this may be something if you're going to distribute these materials, like the district has to, we could do that every Tuesday at 4:00 in front of Dodd Middle School. I mean, any religion that wants to do it, we're not going to say no, but this is the location, time, and place, and it's on your website or something. That's all I can think is, maybe what this addresses, but I would want to get a little clarity, seeing as this has never come up in my tenure as an administrator.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess, and then the other thing would be adding that clause about advertising, because I guess in all these years we really haven't had a problem with it, but it's not in here either. So.
Well, we haven't had a problem with it because we do that already. I mean, a lot of the advertising stuff we are really strict about. Now, there is the one exception to this, which maybe you carve out or bring to light here. We do permit advertising in certain places. So, like programs, excuse me, for sporting events at the alumni field there, we allow that on the game field, out in the softball. We do permit that under those limited circumstances. So, maybe we call attention to that here.
Right. So I even recall, Tim, maybe even back in the day, there used to be like you could buy book covers and it would have like, local community advertising.
Red and white. You're right.
Yeah. Right. Red. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You could fold them over the books and, do that, I don't even do the kids even do that anymore. I don't even know.
Right. Yeah. You don't see, back in my day, it was the paper lunch or the paper grocery bag.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Sam, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to so right now, Dr. Stone, we limit advertising to certain areas, right? Because I know we do a lot of fundraisers with businesses, wanting to buy banners and so forth. So that's only in restricted areas at the moment?
Yeah, so the PTO can do things. I mean, if they're doing that as a fundraiser, they might have a certain angle on that. But as a school system, the only advertising we permit is when we sell space at athletic venues, and we have limited that to the baseball, softball, and the main turf field.
Okay.
Just one quick point on that. So you don't like the drama doesn't do like a playbill anymore? Because I know we had in years. I recall that in years past, just like a standard playbill where it might have.
They do, and like that would be
that's fine.
Like
I'm
I
just
said, when we do like game brochures and stuff, that falls under that category.
Oh, okay. You said games. I was thinking sports only. Yeah. So
yeah,
okay, I understand. I was just trying to
more inclusively. Yes, we do it for music and play as well.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that seems all what you're doing seems perfectly reasonable. I don't really want to see like Cheshire High School presented by Verizon Wireless.
Right.
But what you're doing makes sense. I think it seems reasonable.
So we can scrap the North End Verizon Theater at the elementary school.
No offense to Verizon.
Wait,
But
no,
you're
let's not
already
be
at-
hasty.
Right, because they might be giving us a lot of money for that.
Yeah, there could be
Yeah,
some
right.
naming rights in there.
Naming rights, exactly. So, all right. Is everybody okay with where we are so far?
Yeah.
All right. So the next agenda item was 6145.81 student fundraising activities. Um, we do not have a policy on this in our handbook. Let me just double check on the CPS version. No, excuse me, we do have it. CABE does not. I knew it was one way or the other. So let me present our version. Point 8. Oh, this is 0.8. We need 0.81. Student fundraising activities 6145.81.
Yeah, it should be, it's embedded in our,
It's in the
Yeah, I was
agenda.
pulling up
Yeah.
to tell you I'm having an off day today would be. The title of the document for the policy agenda you're operating off of is policy posting 20. There, okay, I see people in it now. All right. So school. All right, there's part of the disconnect. School activity fund was tabled. Monies in school buildings was tabled. So the next item is actually advanced courses or programs, correct? On the
oh,
agenda?
Yes.
yeah, I just thought that since the other three policies are sort of related, that I thought maybe you wanted to do the fundraising activity one first.
Yeah,
Since
that
the
would
other
make
ones are very
sense.
similar. So that, yeah, that's why I didn't say anything, because I figured the
Yeah,
other ones are
that
very
would make
similar.
sense, Adam. But I'm not dealing in a lot of logic today, unfortunately. All right, so advanced courses or programs. These are both new mandated policies. So I'll pull that up and share screen here.
Okay, so we're going in order then. We're going to go to
Yeah, I apologize.
6141.51. Okay. So I'll be honest. What's the difference between 50.51 and .52?
Yeah, so
There didn't seem to be a whole lot. It seemed very, very similar.
yeah, didn't 6141.52 seem like a succinct version of the previous one?
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
thought maybe I'd clicked on the same one when I was reading it. I was like,
yeah, so in the policy, in effect, the policy was designed to provide greater access to rigorous coursework for kids. And I'm not going to tell you that we were always perfect in this respect, but we do provide a lot of acceleration options for students, particularly through math at the middle and high school level. All content areas, for at least core content areas at the high school level, have leveling options. For example, AP, competitive college, prep, college prep. There are various options there. But on a bit of a history lesson, when my predecessor at Dodd Middle School, I will call him the great Don Malonis because he really was an incredible principal, first became principal, there were, I want to say, 8 levels for each content area. And there's not a lot of data that supports leveling in the middle school. So when that got collapsed down, the more that it got collapsed down to one level, the higher the achievement went. And so it's a very local example of finding success. And it says that we should identify students who are performing above the grade level. And frankly, that's the majority of our kids when you look at their assessments. So, yes, do we need to continue to identify pathways to ensure that students are challenged? Absolutely. But as part of their academic plan, we already do that with students. This would be an implementation for July 1. But we do prepare students when they engage in course selection at the middle and high school. A lot of information around the various acceleration options that exist. Even to give you an example, at the high school, when students take the PSAT exam, there are predictors based on national data that say, well, if you got this score on the PSAT, there's this percent probability that you'll be successful in this AP class. And because we aspire to give every student who is interested and capable exposure to at least one AP course or ECE course or collegiate level class before they graduate Cheshire High School, we'll send letters to kids that don't have any enrollments in those classes and have them connect with their school counselor to say, hey, the data says you would be successful here. I see your grades are, so why didn't you try it? Do you want to try it? Do you want to try it? Maybe it's not this AP class. Maybe it's an ECE class. Maybe it's something different. But in order to encourage kids to challenge themselves for rigorous curricular experiences, and the title of this policy is Challenging Curriculum Policy. And it's really about how to have advanced. How do we really push kids to take rigorous coursework?
So the policy itself, so just to be clear, so this is dictated by statute, this policy?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have, so it seems like it sets up a framework to identify at least advanced at least advanced, because I think there's another policy that talks about gifted. And I don't know if there's a distinction or not. In the 8th and 9th grade to almost set up like a framework on how to identify kids who might be ready for advanced classes. So is that something that we do now, or is this a formal process that the state wants us to implement?
I do think they want a more formal process.
Okay. Do we agree with that?
Well, I mean, there are some other state laws that I don't necessarily agree with, but, we do have to follow state law. And I don't think this is going to be something that's going to be terribly cumbersome. Well, it might be more cumbersome, but I don't think it's anything that is something we can't do.
So do we report to the State Department of Ed now, all of our advanced placement students?
Um, I,
Because
I,
that's what this is requiring
I
us to
can't,
do.
I don't know that for a fact, to be honest with you. That might be part of our required upload, but I haven't confirmed that with Scott Conway and Tom Lewalk, the two guys who do all of our
Yeah.
upload of required information to the state.
Because I
But
thought
I
that
can
was like
confirm
the
that.
strangest thing of all. It was like if there was a data reporting requirement there for anyone who was identified that they, they had to be reported to the Department of Ed. So I don't know. I think that, if it's just a matter of, I don't know, strangely written law or, because we've encountered that before. Sam, go ahead.
So I read this as, and we're actually working on the same thing, Dr. Solon, on my daytime life. I read it as basically allowing, expanding the access for kids, if correct me if I'm wrong, and therefore we do report it. I would assume the reporting impacts the accountability index, because don't we have to identify which courses, and I'm trying to picture the accountability index right now.
Yeah, at the high school level, anything that's like a dual enrollment or
Yep.
college level class, so ECE, AP courses, those get reported to the state. I do know that. I don't know there is a difference between identified and engaged in those classes, because not all identified students elect to take those classes.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the majority do, but so it is unique. The mandating of this, but I think as you said, Sam, I really think that this is a effort to be more inclusive of kids, and make sure that all students have access to rigorous coursework, which is something we've embraced for as long as I know.
Yep.
But I do think it's also good to have a mechanism in place to ensure that. And if this helps with that, then I'm okay with it, And so this does require, for the 22-23 school year, that we do design a pathway or a framework of how to do this. It's probably going to be a lot like our talented and gifted framework, which we're going to talk about here momentarily.
Okay, so did we determine if 51 and dot 51 and dot 52 are the same? Or
No,
would we have to advance both
when
for first reading?
And I have to apologize. I explained to Adam when we first logged on here that the agenda isn't exactly as I thought it was going to be drawn up. That's on me. It was a miscommunication between, I guess, Carol and myself. Unfortunately, she's on vacation this week, or she'd be here in the meeting. 6141.51. When you click on that link, it takes you to 6141.52. So
That would explain it.
Yeah, which is, so you're not crazy, Adam. They are exactly the same as you look at them there, because the link for 6141.51 is not accurate. What I'll do is download 6141.51, and I can email it to everybody on the call right now, and I'll pull it up for people to be able to see at home. $61.41.51.
So what I just want to try to put this into my own words. We're basically we have a program in place for high school AP classes, et cetera, sort of putting it under a broad umbrella. And there's a state law which says we need to measure the established criteria, which we may already have. They might change, but we need to set the criteria in stone, report those in, and then also measure on an annual basis the students that are involved or not involved. Is that
not the measurement of students involved and not involved is not part of this policy. The conversation, the conversation about the measurement of those involved or not is part of the statewide accountability reporting process that they have to look at each. This is like a report card for the school system. And one of the indicators on that report card is the percentage of students engaged in, this rigorous coursework. So I think when we talk about measuring that, that's the reference there is to that report card. This is telling us as a school system that we need to identify criteria for students to have access to more rigorous schoolwork.
okay? And we have that already,
Which we already do.
so
The one nuance here that I would caution is that middle schools will offer advanced academic classes in the 4 content areas of language arts, math, social studies, and science. To me, that sounds like you're trying to dictate that school districts level middle schools in all of those 4 content areas, which I think would be shameful and a tremendous overstep. But like I said, there's only data to support that in math. But that may be, a misinterpretation. And I think we can look at how do we, engage in this policy without doing that. Because that's not, in my professional opinion and professional experience, good for kids.
So is the state law saying that we have to do that right now?
The state law says we have to offer advanced academic classes in 4 content areas. They don't really define what that means. So we, all this is subject to some level of interpretation, which I'll review with Kevin Hanlon and Marlene before our next meeting.
Okay, so
we'll talk about it, clarify anything in here, and then, ultimately upon passage, legally anyway, we would have to design the identification process. And so I think we're probably already there, but we'd have to just put it in writing and make it available on our website. So we would have to do that anyway to comply with law, whether or not the policy gets passed. But I think for your edification, you would want to know, what is our process going to be? What does this actually mean for our kids in the policy?
I'll also bring up that now just scanning through dot 51, that there's already a contradiction, because the definition of advanced studies specifically says grades 9 through 12.
Right.
Where there's already a contradiction between the 2 policies.
Yeah, I'm very uneasy about saying we're going to start leveling 8th grade classes. I don't love leveling 9 through 12, to be honest with you. I do it as something that I guess we've already, not a school system, as a society, come to grips with. I don't know that it's great for kids, though.
So can I jump in, Adam?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Sam, I see you shaking your head. You're a professional in this particular situation. Are you generally in agreement with what Jeff is saying? Like leveling at the middle school level is.
I
not a good
am
idea?
not a proponent of leveling in the middle school or any
You cut it out, and I'm not sure if I missed the word
level,
not.
but specifically in the middle school, we actually got rid of leveling.
Okay,
I said I'm not a proponent of it at all.
got it. Got it. Now, yeah.
We actually work to unlevel our middle schools, and we do see higher results from the unleveling. I think it leads to a lot of segregating. Our issues are our demographic issues. It prohibits certain groups of students to have access to these types of courses, and that should not be the case. So when you have a very diverse population, somehow it tends to be that, for example, all the white kids are in the ECE AP classes, so that's where our struggle lies. And I think here it's, Cheshire's been very good, like Dr. Solon said, in providing access to a variety of advanced courses. My question is, does this in some way, Dr. Solon, hinder the kids being able to get credit for courses in the middle school? Because I know that's out there as well too.
Right. So the access to getting credit for courses in the middle school is pretty clearly defined, and it's around language and math in terms of advanced coursework at this time, whether or not that gets expanded. But right now, all of our kids have that access to those eighth graders. And by the way, Sam, what you couldn't make out in your audio was clear in your body language, and so I appreciate that point too. And one nuanced addition I want to just add to what Sam so astutely said was that when you compress levels, all students' achievement improves. It's not just the achievement, and I know it sounds counterintuitive. It's not just the achievement of those who were formerly in the lower level get better. All achievement overall improves. So it's not, and I'll give you a Cheshire example, the more inclusive we've been in providing access for students with special needs to class, kids that have identified special education plans, the more successful all of our kids have been, including special ed. So, it's somewhat counterintuitive for some people, but it's the reality, and we had plenty of data to illustrate it. So we'll take a look at this with Kevin and Marlene, and we'll come back next month with some more of so you get a better sense of what does this policy look like in action, right? So we'll take a look at this, but and then what does it mean, to your point, Adam, against 6141.51? And the difference in language is there. So if everybody's okay, we can take a look at 6141.51 if you want to do
Oh, yeah.
that.
And just so for an educational layman such as myself, leveling means that, or not having leveling means that more students are exposed to more rigorous academic courses than they normally would be, because they would have been labeled not as, smart, or not smart enough to be in an advanced class or something, where they could still be exposed to a piece of literature or mathematics or science that they normally would have been exposed to if there was multiple levels of courses of the same thing. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
I think
That-
at a base level, I think you're right. I think some people argue that, well, we'll take all the kids who need the most support and we'll put them in a group together and try and give them more intensive support. And then through the best of intentions, they often move at a much slower pace. They often emphasize weaknesses over strengths. Often
Right, they're not challenged.
cut curriculum down. Right.
Right.
And it can be a function of lowering the bar. And it, like, for me, I wasn't, I know it's going to be hard to believe, but a gifted runner, you know, I, in terms of running any great distances was never my forte. But if you put me in with a group that ran faster than I typically did, I'd run faster. And I think that's part of the, just kind of an analogy here to this work. So
That's an analogy that I can understand.
6141.51. Adam already gave us a bit of a sneak peek here, but again, this is another mandated policy about access to academic rigor, and they want all students to have access to rigorous curriculum. The board should encourage participation in advanced courses or programs, communicate information about these programs and courses to parents. Again, we are in a district where the vast majority of our students choose to be college oriented. So this is kind of a default position for us. Even if we weren't in that environment, I mean, we would strongly recommend students take the most rigorous coursework for them possible to benefit them, as students and people. But basically, as a school system, we need to provide access to these courses, limit criteria that hinder enrollment in these courses, use a variety of strategies to determine how students will be provided access to these courses, like what you see right here under 4, where we have to consider all these variables. And we're always trying to improve. I'll give you an example from probably 10 years ago now, when I was high school principal. We had a student who wanted to take chemistry. And the student, didn't meet the math criteria. And I asked, well, is there an exam that we could give to determine if the student would be able to take chemistry? And the student took the exam and didn't do as well. Is the cutoff. Everybody appreciated that access, but we also gave that chemistry exam to the kids in the class, the math exam. I said, well, let's have the class take that exam. They did the same way that she did. So we opened access to chemistry then for more people by identifying, what truly is academically necessary that would be a gateway to these rigorous classes. So it does here, Tim, talk about evaluation, that we will review annually data on student participation in these classes, and that we look at the factors such as gender, ethnicity, and free reduced lunch participation, and make adjustments as necessary. We've been doing that for at least 12 years. We do that all the time. We want to make sure that we're opening doors, not closing doors.
So Jeff, I think there's only one section that I kind of have a problem with.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's even if there's anything we can do about it. But section 4, part C says the use of students' prior academic performance must rely on evidence-based indicators of how a student will perform in an advanced course or program. So now I'm interpreting that as if a student's prior performance would show that they would not do well in an advanced course, almost is saying that we want to keep the student's GPA up, but we're also not willing to allow the student to try it and fail. And so is that what it's supposed to mean? Or am I looking at it wrong? Because it seems like if the student is all of a sudden just, wants to give it a shot, but they don't do well, I mean, I guess it's not like in college where you could drop the course and try again on something else. I guess it's not like that, but
We don't do,
know.
quote, try again, but, we do have kids change levels sometimes. Sometimes it's, based on performance, sometimes it's not. But, when I look at those 6 variables there, I think you're considering a preponderance of evidence to support the student, either entering or not entering the more rigorous class. And one, such piece of evidence is looking at their prior performance and evidence base. So when I talked about that PSAT, that's evidence because it'll tell you with your PSAT score, 42% of the kids pass this class. With your PSAT score, 100% pass this class, or 0. So, I mean, that's really evidence-based sort of look at it. So, the idea of, all right, you want to take AP Bio, but when you took Bio as a sophomore, you had an F in that class. Do you really think it's a good idea to take AP Bio? I mean, so some of those things, we just use it as a screener, not you must pass all 6 tests. You look at the whole body and we're trying as a school system to elevate and provide opportunities and supports when needed for success in those higher level classes.
But those criteria do sort of form a gatekeeping type situation, right? So you're still determining ahead of time that you're, I guess, making sure that a student doesn't waste their time. Is that how you view it, as opposed to not?
I would frame it in the affirmative, in the sense that making sure students make the most of their time. But,
okay.
Same
Sam,
thing, just said differently.
Sam,
No,
you had your hand up.
I would definitely agree. The other flip side to this, Adam, is like parents pressuring kids to, you have to take, the high level courses when it's not appropriate for them to do so. I've dealt with that in, what I do. And after a conversation with the family, realizing, okay, this might not be an appropriate course for them to be in, then they realize, okay, based off the data, you're right,
Okay. Understood.
We have to protect our kids from parents too, don't forget.
Of course.
I mean, everybody means well, but you also have to lead by whatever the data shows in past performance too.
Tim?
Yeah, so I want to put this into my words and see if this is a fair description. When we started this conversation, I was thinking like leveling on or off, yes or no. And when I say that, just so, I don't know, Adam, you might remember this, but literally what goes through my mind in leveling, it still sort of shocked it still shocks me, and it did even back then. It finished in 1986. Did you get in your report card, Adam, the levels, which was like high above average, high average, below average, and then specialty, and everyone knew the classroom you were in, the homeroom. Yeah, no, Sam, it's true. It would go out with every report card. That's what we would get. So what I'm thinking is the conversation in my mind, it was yay or nay, and what it is really more of a spectrum. You have a whole tool chest. This is the leveling is one tool that you think is inappropriate, but there are other tools to ensure the optimal progress and realistic progress for students. Is that?
Yeah. So the leveling yay or nay thing. And I think what Sam and I were really speaking to is at the middle school level, having a professional and data-driven rationale for thinking that's not a great idea to start leveling everything and pushing that down. At the high school level, it's really kind of inherent in the system. And we don't have a huge myriad of levels at the high school. We'll have college prep, competitive college prep, and then as you matriculate in some of the courses, it'll open up to AP level work or ECE, that level work. We want to encourage as many students as are comfortable with their families to pursue the most rigorous coursework. And that might not, and that's not a blanket endorsement for every course. That means, we look at, what are your goals academically? How are you performing academically? How are you doing personally? Maybe we want to take this AP course, but not that course over here. And, I'm sure, you guys haven't had those conversations with your kids yet, but I know I've had that conversation, and as a principal, I've shepherded a lot of families through those conversations about how do we make these determinations. And frankly, the criteria listed in 6141.51, recommendations, how did you do in some of your other courses, what are your interests, what sort of student are you? You're going to have to do a lot of summer work in this AP class, right? Is that you? Is that something you're comfortable with? Well, yeah, maybe in this content area, but not that content area. So these are this gate that is being outlined here is really what good schools and good counselors and good principals do every day. So nothing in here that I'm uncomfortable with. It's really, as I said before, I think that we, as a school district culture in a high school and middle school, really want to push our kids to that level of proximal development, as they would say in a theoretical sense. Hard enough to be rigorous and challenging, not so hard to overwhelm or make it impossible or frustration, but not too easy either. And I think if these policies help codify that approach, then I think that's great. I think when it goes overboard is when you start leveling, elementary school classes and 7th and maybe even 8th grade classes where there's not data to support that. And that's where I want to look into this with Kevin, Marlene, and our curriculum people. And maybe I'll even ask Marlene to come to the next meeting to kind of weigh in. We can put it first on the agenda or something.
Tim.
Yes, what year is the first year that, as of this year or last year, what's the first year that students take Algebra 1? 7th grade, 8th grade?
Well, it's a bit of a trick question because, again, we try and meet students where they are.
Okay.
We have elementary school students that have taken Algebra 1.
Oh, okay. So the point is that
in math,
that continues.
In math is the one place where data supports, that level of
got it.
Discerned leveling, if you will. I mean, I had a kid in 8th grade. I had his parent tell me, I want my son as a freshman to take calculus because he took calculus, but it was in Chinese. I want to make sure he's mastered English with it. Yeah. Huh?
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
This kid was really impressive. He was somebody that was way off the charts. What's that?
But that's a math thing. Now you become a language barrier too at the same time.
Right.
Are you taking the math content, or are you really taking it for the English language aspect of it?
Yeah, he wanted both. I mean, he was a ferocious math student, and but the point being that we're going to meet you where your needs are in any class. math is unique in its leveling, that it's so sequential. Other content areas aren't like that. So, we do that now with the levels. But
Okay.
typically a student, en masse, where we level would be Algebra 1 in 7th and 8th grade in an accelerated, framework. About 60 to 70% of our students are taking those accelerated math classes. So I will, review this again with Marlene and Kevin. We'll come back and have a conversation next go around the 6141, 5.1 and 5.2. Unless there are any other questions on those two for the moment.
Feel good about it so far?
Okay, student fundraising activities. I can share screen on our current. One is 6141, 45. So soliciting and fundraising. You see our policy in front of you.
Seems like our policy
wait.
is pretty bare bones.
Yeah, why are we talking about this one? It seems, I mean, what we have seems okay to me. Are we looking to align it with CABES?
Well, I'll pull up CABES for you.
I mean, I read through them. It doesn't really seem, it seems like ours is fine to me. Has there been a problem?
The only thing I like is specifically indicating that when you're doing fundraising for school-sponsored events, you need to fill out the form outlined in the policy. We do have a form, and it's good. It's a good form. It outlines what the activity is, where the money goes, etc. Who's facilitating it, needs to be signed off by people to take some ownership. I know that this is something that we're going to review with Clifton Larson. So, I think what we'll do is we could either postpone this, or we could include this statement on the form as part of the policy that we already have. Or we can, like I said, postpone it and see if Vin has a version that they want us to use.
I would say postpone it.
Okay.
But I think the idea of adding the form language in there is good since it's already practice anyway. At least that would be a good start. But
Yeah.
maybe just make a note, because I guess it'll depend on what the audit found, if there's anything additional that would need to be added there, right?
Yeah. So at the end, when we go through the items that we're going to move forward to a first reading, we'll simply just not mention that one.
Right.
Okay. So the last item for the
I think Sam was trying to ask a question.
Oh,
No, I just
sorry.
wanted to make, So I would say, I just wanted to make sure that this item also, because we didn't review the other two, and it has to do with finance in general, hopefully there's no, not overlap, but there's nothing that would dictate another. Does that make sense? Especially
Yeah.
not having gone through the other.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that all three policies work in concert and not against each other, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I'll certainly review that with Vin in advance. I know he already sent a policy out to our administrators to take a look at. So we'll continue that internal review process to make sure that they are in concert. The next item was the gifted and talented students. This is a brand new policy. Okay. Basically, what this is saying is that is a school system required to identify students for gifted and talented services. So we already have a process whereby every year we review all of the data with a team and identify students for gifted and talented. We send out letters to that effect. And it's, this everything that we do, we've been, basically following this policy anyway.
Okay, so this is mandated policy per statute. So
Right.
did they just tweak statute, or was this entirely new statute that just happens to be in line with our practice?
I believe that they created new statute on this.
Yeah, I think the change here, they had a policy, the old policy did not include talented in it. So the new statute includes talented now, and that the districts, I believe, are responsible in trying to find multiple ways of measuring the both academic and talented, which typically is like in the arts and so on.
I do know that
I do
was
like-
an addition.
Yeah, I do like this, Dr. Solon. There was one wording I would suggest changing. I actually like this a lot. I almost want to ask if I can kind of hijack this because I'm rewriting our own
Well, we
ours right now.
from Cape, so. Actually,
There was a lot. I figured maybe we can change it to will as opposed to must. Let me just try to find it. Because at least it'll give us some more flexibility. Sorry, my computer's running slow. And it's buffering.
What paragraph is it on the?
There's a must right in the middle of Jeff's sheet right now. There's
There's a
only two
must, and I think
The
we
final
could do.
determination and the identification of students as gifted, third paragraph down. Was it that one?
So yeah, the identification process must include. I would suggest change it to will include.
That might be a statutory requirement
You think so?
because must include multiple measures in order to identify students' strengths in intellectual ability, creativity, or a specific academic area. Because the must in that sentence it requires us, like you had said earlier, to not just look at intellectual ability, but creativity as well, adding the arts component to that. I'll ask on that. You know what? Cabe has a policy guru who I can ask on that.
Yeah, if you change the wording, that changed the
Right. The intent of, yeah.
Yeah. My thought is it just gives us a little more flexibility on those multiple measures, that's all. As opposed to must, to me, restricts us to, and maybe I'm reading it differently, that's all. It kind of restricts us in a way that these are the areas of measurement. But then again, you did outline it below, so.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of what the difference would be between, must says this, so if you change it to will, that means you could add more than this, right? If you change it to will? Because doesn't will say that you're
Was
still
it
using
will
multiple measures?
Was it will that you wanted or may?
I would like to see will,
Okay.
like this is something we will do, and it gives us, or at least your administration, some more flexibility if measurements change down the road, to interchange those, whatever it is that you're going to use. That's all.
I don't see any difference between will and must in terms of, on our end. I don't think it would be an issue to change it to will if you prefer that language.
Yeah, may would be a,
Yeah, may is
yeah.
more relaxed.
Yeah.
Will or must, I think, carry it. So I made a note for that, and I will ask the folks at CABE for their interpretation on that, but I think it should be okay.
And then is there any way that, again, the statute says we have to identify, but not necessarily service. We don't necessarily have to service. So maybe some language that says the district will make every possible effort to provide, because I don't know how confident you are, Dr. Solon, in that, we had the gifted program, but is that going to always be the case is what I'm trying to anticipate,
I think on the surface, that shift to maybe ensure that we continue to have a teacher serving the population. Now, keep in mind, that's only elementary school now. When you make a change like that, does this encompass all kids K through 12 that we're going to make every possible? And now you're looking at a dramatic increase in a financial commitment there.
Right.
That might be better served if there's a challenge to continuing with talent and gifted to look at that, but I'd be nervous about creating a real fiscal demand there right now, unless that's where people want to take it. So, all right. Going back to the policy, that concludes all of our first reviews. And I'm going to try and make this a little more straightforward by highlighting the items that we indeed reviewed. and are ready to move forward. And then we have the
So even though we still have some questions there, we can still adjust them going into the second reading.
right.
Right, so, okay.
And then we would move in our agenda to personnel non-discrimination. I'll share this. At this point, this is a third reading. We should all be pretty familiar with this, but this is our policy that says we can't discriminate based on age. The piece you see highlighted in gray is the new part. We've been complying with this because it's part of federal law and state law anyway, but we don't have it reflected in our policy. This is a required change in policy.
Okay.
Any questions on that one?
No question.
So this, is this on, I thought we did a third read on this already. On the non-discrimination.
I don't think so, but we may have. I hope not. Let me look at.
We moved one, no, that was this past meeting, the meeting before that, we moved a policy to a third reading.
We had at the last meeting a review for a second reading. This was on April 20th, 2022, review for a second reading, personnel non-discrimination. So this meeting would be review to moving it to a third reading. Right? Let me look at the board policy or the board meeting here quickly from the last.
So I think the last one we moved to a third reading was the one dealing with resumes, I think, which wasn't necessarily age, if I recall. So I think Ann and Faith had comments.
Which impacts our hiring practices.
Right, hiring practices, right. Yeah, so I think that was the last one that we did.
Okay.
First and third reading.
So at the May 19th meeting, we didn't have any policy to report on.
Right.
Let me look here on the meeting prior.
That might be it, Adam, because I was not at the May 19th, and I thought that that was our third read right then and there.
Well, honestly, I thought we were missing something because I had actually emailed Carol during the middle of the meeting. I was like, I think we're missing minutes for our policy meeting. She's like, no, we didn't have a meeting. Like, there wasn't a meeting.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my bad.
Yeah, and the meeting prior to that was the high school showcase.
Mm-hmm.
The meeting prior to that was April 21st, which was a day after the last meeting. Yeah, so we only had a second reading on that.
Thank you. I was a little off in the calendar.
No worries. So, okay, that concludes the policies that we were, bringing under consideration this evening, and moving forward. There are two other points of interest for conversation. Would you guys prefer to make a motion on the existing policies that we reviewed tonight before we get there, or do you want to review these two items and then make the motion at the end?
I think we can make the motions now. Yeah.
All right, so why don't I present screen so whoever wants to make the first motion can see the ones that we're moving forward for our first reading. The highlighted ones are the ones that we're moving forward.
Okay. All right, so I'll make the motion here. Move that the policy committee move to a first reading, policy number 1140, distribution of materials to and by students. Policy 6141.51, advanced courses or programs. 6141.52, challenging curriculum program. And 6172.1, gifted and talented students. Is there a second? Tim, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Fantastic. And then the second is move that policy number 4118.11, personnel non-discrimination, be moved to a third and final reading. Is there a second? Sam, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Sam? There we go. It is unanimous. Perfect. And now we can move on to section 4.
So there were 2 elements in there. I know Tim will be pleasantly surprised that the new law removes the sunset date for conducting remote and hybrid meetings. I think we all appreciate that as we're here this evening. Again, I mean, committee meetings are the work of the Board of Education done in public, not necessarily a public meeting, but we want to be incredibly transparent and accessible. We think that in this format, it allows for both and for us to accomplish our work efficiently, effectively, and transparently. The CABE has not yet put forth the policy guidance on adopting this as part of policy, but we are following and compliant with the law. That will be coming soon. The policy will be coming soon. Any questions on that? Because I know we want to take a look at that and codifying it into policy in the near future.
I guess for me, the only question I had was the part at the end where it's saying for public comment, that if someone wanted to comment, that they would have to request in writing to have a terminal set up so that they could comment during our virtual meeting. And I was wondering if there's been clarification on that or not, or if that could be done through a supplied public link or something.
Sure.
I guess that's that weird thing, right? I mean,
yeah. So if we get a written request that I don't want to participate virtually, the school system must set up a time and place for them to participate virtually, real time. So,
right.
In other words, I don't like this. I don't want to log on this option. I don't want to send questions. And this is generally more so for, usually, we have public comment meetings in policy, in a committee. Many boards do not. I would say even most. So usually in a full board meeting, let's say the full board was virtual and you had a public comment section, like somebody could technically go to town hall and, Mike Salamini could stream them into this virtual space to let them speak for 3 minutes. I really don't anticipate that being we don't get people oftentimes to comment virtually via email, let alone come in person to a policy committee meeting or something like that. Obviously, if it's a big deal issue, Adam, I've heard you say to me before, like if we're anticipating a lot of public comment, we would do it in person,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So that's, but we will certainly get clarification when the new policy comes out and is available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, so just generally, I think my hope is that you or Mike, whoever is doing it, just can work on making it more accessible, like you were just saying, or what we're experiencing tonight.
Right.
Just whatever the stuff is, just to try to make it as accessible as possible. I mean, I've explained all my thoughts on virtual meetings, but you know, I think we should make a good faith effort. And I'm not creating any sort of timeline on this. I know Mike's got a million things to do, but going in that direction, I think it would be valuable.
Agreed.
Sam, go ahead.
I mean, Dr. Solon, couldn't we just provide them, similar to how you had town hall meetings virtually, provide them the same link that we're on and they just hop into the space? I mean, granted, if they didn't have the means, the technical means, we'd give them access to it. But I would think by now, majority of the public has either a phone or a computer, which they can sign on to this particular link if need be to make comment.
Yeah, you know, the only issue I've heard around that is people hijacking that and, you know, disrupting meetings. Not even members of our own community, just somebody who's got too much time on their hands wanting to say profanity or something in a public meeting because that's what gets them excited in life. I don't know. But
the Zoom bomb,
yeah,
Zoom bombs
we
coming in.
might find a way to work around that.
Possibility in Cheshire.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think our people are better than that, but you know, we can look at options to get them to participate virtually. And when we have clear guidance about what the expectations are, it's a real good summer project that we'll be working on. The last item, I just want to update you. In the curriculum committee, there was discussion about how do school systems navigate curricular questions, concerns, complaints. So they've done work to walk through other policies from other districts, and they've forwarded to us another policy to consider. So in advance of the next meeting, we'll get you a copy of said policy. Marlene is finalizing that with Kevin. And I'll take a look at that, and then we'll send it off to you to review for our next meeting. But I just wanted to make you aware of when you see that show up on your agenda, like, what is this? Where did this come from? It was just forwarded on from the curriculum committee.
So that's the policy that Faith and Ann were referring to.
Right.
Okay,
Yep. Yeah.
great.
So next meeting, we're going to start a little differently at 7 p.m. To accommodate the auditor who can make it virtually at 7:30. And so I'm sure we'll be advancing the 4 policies we advanced tonight in that first half hour, plus taking a look at that meeting, the policy from curriculum. Then the remainder of the meeting will focus on the audit. If that's okay, Adam, does that make sense?
Yes.
Sam?
Question?
I just want just a little clarification because we have 2 links. There's a 6:30 link and a 7 o'clock link.
Yeah, the 6:30 will be removed.
Okay.
Vin just sent out the 7 o'clock link today. So,
Yep, I see Vin's.
and, unfortunately, is the organizer, Carol, can only send that out.
What are you gonna do without her?
It's only one day, and the wheels have fallen off the wagon. So. she'll enjoy hearing that and when she puts the minutes together upon her return. Anyway. All right, that was
Okay,
all we had on the agenda.
Great. So is there any other items or business to come before this policy meeting? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. All right, first and Sam second. All in favor? All right, it is unanimous. This meeting is adjourned at 8:05.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.
Appreciate your patience
All right.
tonight. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.